and welcome to Asian Women for Health's podcast, From Resilience to Radiance. I'm Audrey Peck, your host of this monthly series that spotlights important health issues impacting our communities, while amplifying the voices of Asian women who inspire and challenge the way we think about our health and well-being, as well as our ability and capacity to be resilient. In recognition of AAPI Heritage Month, I am excited to tap into some Korean sisterhood energy today with my special guest, Jeanie Chang. Jeanie is a licensed marriage and family therapist and entrepreneur as the founder of Your Change Provider, a therapeutic practice that takes a holistic approach to promoting good mental health and wellness. She's also a dynamic global mental health speaker, a best-selling author to her personal memoir titled A is for Authentic, Not for Anxieties or Straight A's. And above all, she's a loving wife and mother of four. Hello, Jeanie. 반갑습니다.
Hi, Audrey. I love it. I love the Korean sisterhood here.
My limited Konglish. But we're so grateful to have you here and zooming in from North Carolina. How's everything there?
Good. Nice and sunny. So I can't complain. And we're entering spring. So it's going to go from 70 to 100 degrees soon. That's how North Carolina works. So yeah.
I hear you. So before we dive into our topic of the day, mental health, I wanted to ask if you'd share your Korean name.
Sure. So full Korean name, married Korean name is Chang Yoo-jin. Chang Yoo-jin.
Chang Yoo-jin. Yes, mine is Peck Hae-yeon.
Hae-yeon.
Audrey is actually my first name.
I love that you asked that because I don't get to share my Korean name, you know?
Right?
It's special.
Right? Well, I think, we so identify in Korean culture with our family name. And for those who aren't familiar and are listening, we place the family name, our last names first in our introductions, more formal. But it seems like we all have a story to tell about whether we use our Korean name or not.
Yes, I have a story to tell.
Would you like to share it?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I've come a long way to be able to be proud to share my Korean name. That sounds sad, but when you grow up Korean American, and I came when I was a baby, I was born in Seoul, came when I was a baby, Yoo-jin, so my maiden name, Hae Yoo-jin, Yoo-jin was interpreted as Eugene, right? So they'd be like, oh, Jeanie, which was also my birth name, Jeanie Yoo-jin Bae, maiden name, but people would make fun of it. So I think my first experience with my Korean name in the US was being made fun of, right? And as a kid, that's traumatic. So I think for years, I really resented my Korean name and actually chose never to say it. But now if you look at my title, it's not here on the Zoom, but on my title, everywhere in my emails, when I reference my bio, it's Jeanie Y. Chang. Jeanie Yoo-jin Chang is what it stands for. That's a big deal that I'm so proud to have my Korean name as my given name as well as my English name. But to be able to say, and I love that you asked it, and I was proud to share it on the podcast, just means where I am in my identity journey, which is a lot of the mental health experience with Korean Americans or Asian Americans.
I hear you. I can totally relate. I went from Audrey Peck to more recently, Audrey H. Peck. And then in some private social media accounts, I spell out the entire name, Audrey Hae-yeon Peck.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, and that is reflective of my own journey too. But I'll reserve that for another time. I want to get back to you. Earlier in your career, I understand you worked in broadcast journalism and in the corporate world. So what served as a catalyst for you to move professionally into the realm of mental health and wellness? And I ask this because while there's an enormous demand for mental health clinicians like yourself, I don't know, did you ever imagine yourself in this role as you were growing up?
Great question that I love to answer because I'm proud of what I'm doing today. I always share this. The field of mental health found me. I answered a calling to follow the field, to be in the field of mental health later in life. When I say later in life, I'm just not dating myself, but in my 30s, perhaps, where people start their career earlier than that. I never imagined that I would be in the field of mental health. Not because I looked down on it or I thought about it. Again, growing up Korean American, you don't talk about mental health. The
Right.
stigma is also very big in our community or in the API community. So it wasn't really at the forefront of a profession, if that makes sense, right?
Mhm.
But based on my own path, where it left me with where I was with family and my career and feeling happy and wanting to focus on having good mental health, I chose to answer this calling. And I believe it's a calling because it literally, I want to share, it came to me at 2 a.m. one night. I kid you not. I just went in my early 30s going, I'm raising 4 young kids. I mean, I was like in a fog of motherhood, but I went, I'm too young to be unhappy in my career. What can I do? What change can I make? So I was already thinking about my mental health and what can I do to at least sustain myself because I don't want to do this for 30 years or when I was in the field, when I was in marketing. And honestly, at 2 a.m, I jolted up and what came to mind, I kid you not, was marriage and family therapy. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. People are like, really? I go, no, really, it did. And then I was like, marriage and family therapy. I've heard of it. Let me Google it and research it. But it came to mind just like that, really, because, and as I Googled it, I went, this is perfect. I was a mom, right? And I am a mom, sorry. But when I was in the thick of things, raising kids, family therapy, and as an Asian American, when everything's about the family system,
Mm.
really resonated with me. And what I'm doing today is honestly bringing my broadcast career skills, my business. You called me an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. Never thought I would be running my own practice. I'm using all those skills to be what I would say a well-rounded interdisciplinary clinician that I am today.
What a
So
fantastic story. I mean, I wish we would hear more journeys like yours. I don't know about the, as I don't know, can we say it's like a Jerry Maguire moment at 2 a.m.?
I know Jerry Maguire. Yeah, that's a good
You
analogy.
know, that epiphany that you have all of a
It
sudden,
was.
clarity in your life purpose. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty powerful.
That's exactly, mental health had me at hello. Let's put it that way. There we go. Mental health had me at hello when I jolted up from bed and went, marriage and family therapy, interesting. Sounds good. It might be up my alley. And I Googled it, researched it, did a lot of research because don't forget, raising kids at the time to go back to graduate school was a big task to do that. And I did. And people ask me, how'd you get through that? I'm like, you know what? I don't remember. It was survival mode for like 3 years, but and I might not have recommended it with folks raising 4 young kids, 6 and under, but I
Mm.
did get through it. And obviously it was a passion because when you're studying something you enjoy it, right? Yes, I don't miss the papers. I don't miss those 30-page essays. No, but I enjoyed what I was learning. And actually I share this, graduate school for me was my therapy.
Mm.
I was uncovering and learning more about me as an Asian American while I was in therapy grad school. And that's a great thing. When I came out of it, I was like, I'm ready to do this and help others. And now being 100%, nearly 100% an API practice, Asian American Pacific Islander practice, I'm super proud to share that I am serving my community in my mental health practice.
That's fantastic. And I feel you've come full circle,
Yes, exactly.
speak, in this chapter. And we're all benefiting from your knowledge and insight. So I'm grateful that you had that moment. So I had a chance to do some research and look at your website and the content there. Awesome content, by the way. You talk about embracing cultural confidence in your practice. It's sort of a main pillar, would you say? I would love for you to share more and explain its significance to mental health.
Direct correlation to mental health. I love this question. Cultural confidence. If you notice, embracing cultural confidence, language is so powerful in mental health in the sense of the emotions you want to exude. So if you say embrace, you already get a vision of what does that look like? Ooh, I need to be able to envelop this in a practice. Confidence, that already exudes a certain emotion, right? I hope positivity.
Mm.
Cultural confidence actually came about by accident. I like to tell people it's a Freudian slip. Meaning, I must have meant it all along, but it came out by mistake when I was giving a college workshop. Now I want to say almost 3 years, 3.5 years. And I meant to say the word cultural competence, cultural competency, that practice that we've heard of, right? Understanding different perceptions, perspectives, beliefs from, diverse group of people. When I was saying cultural competence, it's clearly on my slide. I was actually pointing to it. So cultural confidence, and then I pause. But being a therapist and feeling energy, right, of the room and the folks, and I know there are at least 50 to maybe 70 Asian American students in that room, in that lecture hall. And I quickly did a quick glance. In Korean, it's called nunchi.
Nunchi, yes.
Using your eye measure and reading the room real quick, because I sensed a shift. The energy that I found, I went, wait, I was about to say, wait, no, I meant cultural competence. But I stopped, looked around, saw people's faces, and I literally saw them go like this. What did Jeanie mean? And I went,
resonated with them.
It resonated. And I went, you know what? Using my nunchi, feeling this energy shift, they liked the word cultural confidence. So from that moment on, I said, well, guys, cultural competence, that's what I meant. But you know what? And I admitted it to them. I go, I think I meant to say cultural confidence. And it was a Freudian slip of my psychology here going, Jeanie is going to come up with some sort of framework. And I shared with them, I really do mean cultural confidence because I saw your faces. And they actually literally said, no, we really thought you meant to say cultural confidence, and we liked it. So that going forward, I used that word and decided to create my own framework to promote good mental health, healthy emotionality. Here's what I say to folks, whether they like it or not, especially Asian Americans, that they're not very expressive, right? But everything's about emotions. And cultural competence doesn't really address emotions. It actually addresses thought and perceptions. But we're very driven by our emotions, right? And you'll never hear me say to folks, hey, why are you angry? Like, why are you sad? That's not what a therapist does. We validate what you're feeling, because what you're feeling is what you're feeling. And so cultural confidence addresses that. But you want to promote healthy emotionality. So healthy emotionality means feeling what you're feeling, but what are you going to do about them? How are you going to show that behavior that's healthy and effective to have good mental health hygiene? So the framework intersects 4 elements that I see constantly in my work, and it's a circle: mental health, identity, mindfulness, resilience. And I constantly see those 4 elements at play all the time. Mental health, who am I? My identity, right? Which shifts. Then mindfulness practice, which people think of a certain thing when I say mindfulness, but mindfulness is very strategic and very active and something you do all the time. And then we have resilience. And there is such resilience. In fact, I say we have to build resilience. You have to learn how to build your resilience. We all have it. It's not an X factor that you were born with, Audrey, or I was born with. Everybody was born with, but we have to learn and develop that for the sake of our mental health. So cultural competence is that 4-way intersectionality framework. And I developed it, and I'm constantly developing it. So I'm doing a lot of workshops on mental health. By the way, you could talk about mental health for a whole year, right? On all these workshops. So my curriculum is still being developed, but I'm super excited to share that it's in the final stages of trademark. So that's super exciting. Yeah.
That's
But
awesome.
I'm happy to say everything has come about unplanned, came about by accident. But obviously I was onto something. And to this day, when I say cultural confidence, already people go, hey, tell me more, because it sounds good, like as in positive.
Yeah, wow. That's like a load of that's one giant golden nugget.
Thank you. But yeah,
A
just
takeaway. I
mhm.
mean, that's really brilliant, and it resonates with me as well. I mean, the whole feeling around cultural confidence, it's empowering, right?
That's right.
Um,
So I
but
want,
I'm kind of and cultural competency is used a lot in the workplace. So
mhm.
do you use, I'm curious to know whether you use cultural confidence in the professional context, because in work traditionally people don't like to talk about emotions, or it's not necessarily deemed appropriate.
Sure. The answer is yes. My curriculum is I want to say I have a lot of corporate clients. I'm always saying cultural confidence, but I make it clear the practice of cultural competency is in parallel with cultural confidence. It's not to replace it. I'm not trying to take over a new school of thought. I'm just creating my own framework based on the clients I work with in my own clinical experience, and I say this, and I say this in corporate America, whether you like it or not, or whether you know it or not, your emotions are behind a lot of everything you do.
Right.
Think about
Sales.
it.
Sales.
Right. You get angry at people, you get upset, you're happy being at work. This is all mental health. And so in order for me to normalize mental health, the health of our mind, our emotional, social, psychological well-being, that's the definition of mental health. My whole point is to address the stigma of mental health everywhere, every sector, and especially in our API community, in the Asian community, right? You're going to hear me speak about it. I wouldn't be doing my job if I try to reword things, which is why I acted on it when I saw those Asian American students looking a certain way, using my nunchi, reading the room and going, they like this. For that second, I said confidence, cultural confidence, their mental health was boosted. So I'm going to do everything in my power. So it stems from that, right? I'm going to go back to that one incident years ago and know that when I enter corporate America, a lot of my talks, it's not easy talking about mental health to the corporations where they're like, yeah, did Jeanie just talk about depression? I mean, I do talk about depressive symptoms, anxious symptoms, right? Getting panicked in the workplace amongst COVID. There's so much going on, right? And so I bring it all up, and I will use those strong words for the very sake of exuding a certain emotion. Does that make sense? So yeah, cultural confidence, I'll say I'm not replacing cultural competency. There is that thought there. It is in parallel. But
Right.
I'm, as a clinician, going to always bring up emotions. We got to understand our emotions. We got to understand that.
Emotion power.
Right. And here's the thing, you're going to hear me say emotions, what you feel is valid. So if you're feeling anger and rage to sadness and happy, don't justify it. Don't be like, why am I feeling angry? Which we do. We do. I tend to hear it a lot going, yeah, I don't know why I'm mad. I don't know why this person made me mad. Why did Audrey make me sad? Right. I'm like, hey, that happens. That's how you feel. Now, what are you going to do about it? Meaning, what can you do to cope with that anger and sadness? You're never, ever going to hear me say, yeah, I don't think you should have been mad.
Right.
Right. And when
Last thing you
someone
want to
actually
do is
invalidates,
suppress it.
right, exactly. And it's actually worse for someone's mental health when they actually invalidate how you feel.
Of course.
Think about it. When you tell me something, you're like, and you see my face and I'm like, why are you feeling that way? It's
Yeah.
awful. It's
Yeah.
awful,
Of
right?
course. Well, let's talk a little bit about COVID,
Mm,
because and given the spike of anti-Asian violence across the country, I mean, gosh, nearly 4,000 reported incidents. It's really unbelievable. But our community is confronting essentially two pandemics:
yep.
COVID-19 and racism. So, you know, COVID, I call this COVID era because there is hope on the horizon. Um, you
Great.
know, it has exposed these underlying health disparities and um, um, the systemic barriers, essentially, to accessing healthcare, right, across communities of
Right.
color.
Right.
But it has also once again exposed the history of anti-Asian violence, and it triggers people. I know, following the Atlanta mass shooting, something about that moment, um, I think it gave pause to the entire community, and it traumatized us collectively. I was talking to friends, and people were bringing up memories of when they've confronted
Yep.
hate and racial bias. So, not that you can be the panacea for everyone, because everyone is different and they come from different circumstances and how they address mental health, if at all. But how do you address these challenges, or can you offer, as you said, some tools? And I'd like to know, one on an individual level, let's say, um, and then as a collective group. What have you been observing, and what can you offer?
Right. I mean, that's a loaded question. And you said it very well in the sense of what you're experiencing and what I'm seeing
Hmm.
as a collective. First, I'm going to start backwards to answer the very tail end of that question. What can we do individually and then systemically?
Yeah.
You must first address individually. No systemic change will happen, well, I believe, unless you know what's going on with you, right? And because otherwise you're projecting certain things, and we're re-traumatizing one another because we're not addressing our own trauma. I
True.
saw a lot of that actually following George Floyd's killing, and that was really hard to see as well. And then it was actually also after Atlanta.
Mm,
Understandable, there are parallels there.
absolutely.
Yeah, how I suggest this is number one thing. And here's where I'll put on my solution focus, because I'm a solution focused therapist,
Yeah.
and share the positive of what I'm seeing out of everything that we're seeing. Perhaps for the very first time, we're addressing our identity individually and collectively. Even though it's difficult and it came out of a crisis, but in every crisis, there's an opportunity. And the opportunity here is for the first time to talk about racism and
Mm,
mental health. Both racism is a mental health crisis, right? So they both directly correlate. To say, I am not doing very well because the Atlanta incident brought me back to my 15-year-old self. And all of a sudden, I envision myself in that cafeteria being made fun of or whatever happened to you. And that is called post-traumatic stress. So to educate folks, I'm saying you are being traumatized, triggered by an event. And unfortunately, the trauma happened 30 years ago, unfortunately, but it was unresolved or not talked about. And then it hit you at this moment. So I'm seeing post-traumatic stress.
nice.
When people hear that, they're like, whoa, right? I'm like, hey, I'm not saying this to you for this some sort of shock factor and to scare you. I'm actually normalizing what you're experiencing, including myself. In fact, I would say the weeks after Atlanta, when I had to do a lot of talks and these sessions and town halls as a clinician, addressing organizations, being that non-anxious presence, there were times I had to really hold back tears myself because I was also traumatized, right? I was also going through a lot. And as an Asian American, second generation Korean American, thinking about how I perceive things, my own
You
self
did, after
stigma.
all. You're human after all.
I'm human after all. I'm normal. In fact, I say it all the times in my talk. I'm like, I'm normal. It's a joke, but people think us differently, right? But I'm trying to normalize mental health. But my whole point is, I ask people to understand what I call mindful identity. Let me explain what that is, and I teach this. It's part of the cultural competence. Mindful identity is simply saying, you, Audrey, me, Jeanie, I'm the expert of my story.
Mm, wow.
Model minority myth is a narrative that's been told to us and kind of, surrounding us and this dark cloud over us. It's a false and harmful narrative because it was a social construct. But my story is my story. And even though Audrey and I might relate as Korean Americans, we have completely different experiences. We may see things the same, sure. And that's how we kind of connected with the name.
Mm,
But overall, my story is my story, and my story helps me make sense of my reality. That's mindful identity. And that's super important to understand because people are trying to say, oh, Audrey, this is how you're supposed to be like this, right? Or especially in an Asian family when they're like, oh, you're not following the Peck family. This is the way the Peck family is, or the way the Chang family is. And I was like, oh my gosh, right?
I don't
That's
know what you're
very
talking
stressful.
about.
Yeah, I mean, that's very
Sarcastic.
stressful. It's very stressful. So it starts with us and understanding our own self stigma, or AKA internalized racism.
Yes.
You and I just talked about it. The name factor. We were like, oh, we don't want to say our Korean name. We had our own issues with being Asian. And now all of a sudden with Atlanta and then anti-Asian hate and violence, we're like, hey, wait a second. Don't you dare do that to us, right? There is that dichotomy of an experience
Right.
that isn't completely normal. It's okay to have both of those experiences where you are angry for what's happening to Asian Americans, but then you're also feeling a little bit conflicted because you're like, wait, how am I really feeling? I'm going through an identity crisis. All of that is part of the experience of today, and it's also called trauma, racial trauma.
Mm,
So I always say this: it has to start with you, and you'll see me even talking to a virtual audience,
yeah.
300 plus people. I don't care, but I'm talking to the individual, saying, what's going on with you? It starts with you before you want to create any kind of change. And then systemic change can happen when you're like, I am at a point where my identity, I'm understanding it. This is my story. I don't want to adhere to the model minority myth. This is me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that said, what do you do about it? Well, I just talked about being solution focused. That is a strength-based, evidence-based model approach to understanding how you're going to frame things or look at things, perception, nunchi, Korean word for nunchi.
Yes.
For example, we can easily say, you know what, gosh, look at what's wrong with the world, racism, police brutality, right? Black Lives Matter, Black Americans getting killed, Asian Americans getting injured and killed. That's the way you could look at the world, right? And it's pretty, I would say, very distressful. A solution-focused perspective, which I say takes a lot of work, and the intentional practice is to look at, but wait, what's going well in this world?
Mm.
Where are we addressing racism? Wait a second, Asian Americans or APIs for the first time are speaking out. Wow,
Right.
we're really visible in the media. That is being solution focused, and that will improve your mental health. So at the end of the day,
Yes.
I understand when people are angry and full of rage and feeling sad and traumatized. Of course, I'm a therapist, but at the end of the day, I'm about change.
Mm.
How are you going to change that anger so you have good mental health? Because it is not healthy to sit in that anger, right? And be bitter and resentment and full of resentment. That was a very broad way of answering the question, but being solution
Yeah,
focused
that was
and
fantastic.
looking at what's already working well. And do you know how hard that is? The human nature and human brain tends to look at the negative. Who's not doing what? Who missed this? Who didn't say what in the media, right? Which politician said the wrong thing? That's what we look at. That will consume us.
And
We
it's
need
so
to look
much
at,
easier
yeah.
to deflect than to take personal accountability and do your part, whatever that is.
Oh, so
You know,
well said. Yeah, that's exactly right. So I just tell people it takes some training to look at things in the way I just said. What did the politicians say, for instance, that was helpful? And then they're like, and then I say, look for that, because
yes.
that's going to help you with your mental health.
Fantastic. Wow. You're like the perfect guest for this moment. But I so agree with the amount of the silver lining, or just the more practical but optimistic, not impractical though. I mean, positivity can be sometimes misconstrued as unrealistic,
Yes.
but hope, right?
Mhm.
Hope is a very positive emotion. I imagine, as a part of a um, cultural confidence. I'm trying to embrace this here.
Yeah.
um,
I love the word hope. No one can ever take away your hope.
mhm,
You can always hope for better. So let hope drive you, actually, for
right,
change.
right. And we're
And
seeing.
I know, mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was going to say, and I know folks go, Jeanie, it's so hard to be solution focused. I go, no, it's not. You have a choice to think, wait a second, today, the question I ask myself is, when am I not stressed? When am I not discouraged? Not look at, okay, this is stressful, I'm discouraged. Yeah, then your mental health will definitely take a hit. But you can say today, yeah, what's going to help me today? It might be something simple as, let me not do an extra Zoom call at 5 o'clock. Let me turn off my laptop for 3 hours and then go back to work because I have a deadline. I mean, if you have to work, you have to work. So I'm not saying don't work. I'm just saying find those pockets of what's helping you cope, what's giving you hope and joy. And here's the bottom line: what makes you happy? People don't say that enough. Of course, I say that as a therapist, but what makes you happy? Answer that. And if it doesn't make you happy, then do not do it.
Mm, yes, because as we know, in this past year, life goes by too quickly.
That's
Uh,
true.
yes, and I do love the fact that yeah, there is an opportunity for change. We already see it in the community. People are getting more active in their communities. Signing petitions, advocating for policy change as part of the collective. But telling and owning your stories, I mean, that is not only individually empowering, but when everyone is doing that, it conjures up collective movement,
Yes.
right? So that's amazing. So you've addressed some, because you're so good, you've addressed some of the let's see, systemic racism. I love the nunchi. And by the way, as I'm looking through my notes, you do have a YouTube Nuna's Nunchi, which is, I saw the title and I was so intrigued. But I unfortunately don't actually watch a lot of K-dramas, but for the benefit of our listeners, you can share what it is. It's using K-dramas.
And now more than ever, I know people are like, that's so funny, K-dramas, but K-dramas have gone global.
Right.
And it came about, again, working with college kids. Those college kids are inspiring, let me tell you, Gen Zs. But I was bringing up K-drama references sometimes when I was working with college students in workshops. And I'd be like, hey guys, did you guys see this one? And they're like, most of them are like, yes, I have. And I'm like, well, look at the way the dad speaks to the son. And I need you to understand that perhaps that dad, your dad, is struggling just like that dad in K-drama. So I would bring it in to help them with their own mental health and their own family stories. And just so you know, I would even give K-drama homework saying, I need you to watch this episode. So Nuna's Nunchi came about to normalize mental health in a different way, bringing K-dramas, which are super popular, to address mental health issues. And why I think it's super important now in the face of racism to point out K-dramas as a tool is super empowering to me. That Korean dramas, which happen to be from, me being Korean, but it could have been Chinese dramas or Japanese dramas, right? But Korean dramas, which I watch, and it was my form of self-care, I'm using them now more than ever in the face of racism. I have found that they're very healing regardless of race. A lot of people watch it.
Right.
So
not even beyond the Korean
oh
community.
gosh, I mean,
It's all
I'm schooled. In fact, I get scolded by some of my Black and white friends. They're like, you didn't see this K-drama? I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have a lot of time. But
I get critiqued too.
gosh. Yeah. So you're Korean. I go, just because I'm Korean doesn't mean I watch all the K-drama. But their whole point was, I love learning from them.
Yes.
My Black friends telling me, hey, this is a great K-drama. It teaches about family. And I'm just fascinated listening to them. That's where I'm finding that community globally,
Yes.
talking, and then I just tie it to mental health because K-dramas are rich with mental health connections. So that's Nuna's Nunchi. Yeah. But another example of facing my own identity and being proud that I can bring in K-dramas into my work.
That's right. I don't think anyone else has done that. And it's brilliant. And, but it's a safe role play too, right? I mean, it's entertaining, but it's safe because it's one step removed, yet
that's right. So
it presents an opportunity to share.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. So I guess I'll circle back to resilience because our show is called From Resilience to Radiance. So you've touched on it, but I'd like to hear a bit more whether you see resilience as a skill or a mindset.
Great question. It's got to be both. You're talking to a mental health clinician, right? So everything stems, first of all, mental health, health of your mind. Resilience can be learned, resilience can be developed, but it's all based on your emotions and promoting healthy emotionality. So you have to understand what's going on with you emotionally, socially, psychologically, your well-being. So they go hand in hand. In fact, what you must address first is your mindset. Going, okay, I'm not doing well. Or, you know what? I'm in a good place. What am I doing to be in a good place? Building that resilience. And then the skill comes through practice. I mean, as a clinician, I'm offering skills, right, for you to practice.
Mm-hmm.
But at the very end of the day, no skill will work when you don't have this, meaning, yeah, I don't care about getting better. Yeah, you know what? I don't care about being less stressed. This is how and I see that. I'll see some folks just be like, Jeanie, this is too hard. I don't really want to do this. And that's the mindset, right? So the skill won't work without the mindset. I'll be like, hey, why don't we practice deep breathing? They're like, they won't really practice it and then it won't really absorb. But when you're there and you're like, you know what, I'm sick and tired of feeling this stressed out or being depressed, or I'm just not happy.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do? Then I'm like, all right, let's start with this skill. Or breathing is actually, by the way, deep breathing is a core skill of anxiety management. And I do tend to start there, especially in the age of COVID, when people are really escalated and in the face of racism. But I always share this: breathing comes from the mind. Here's a science question for you. I'm going to ask you this. What's the purpose of deep breathing, Audrey?
Deep breathing as I take a deep breath. Is it, well, it's oxygen, right? And it's,
Good job. Yes. Normally people don't think, people are like, well, it relaxes me or does this. You're right. Your brain, when it's in distress, when it's stressed out, when you're not doing well, oxygen is depleted because you're not breathing effectively. You're holding in your breath or like breathing too fast,
right.
right? Because you're stressed out. So you need to have that deep breath to even function, for your brain to go, oh, okay, thanks, Jeanie. You gave me some oxygen. Now I can tell you, calm down, or don't write that text to that person. You're going to say some mean things, whatever comes about, right? This is
Yes.
a daily simple practice, but you're
Hmm.
right, it's to get oxygen back to your brain. So lastly, to answer that resilience question, by the way, resilience, people know that, let me define it in the terms of mental health. It's that psychological quality that helps you bounce back in the face of adversity, that
Right.
helps you bounce back from trauma, helps you bounce back in whatever challenges you're doing, but it's a psychological quality. So that is mindset. And then how to build your resilience comes from skills and techniques.
I see. Beautifully stated. And this is why you are taking interdisciplinary approaches. Everything is integrated, right? Not mutually exclusive.
Correct.
Right. Because I think, as human beings, we're very complex creatures. And
That's right. And mental health is threaded throughout everything, right?
absolutely, absolutely. Well, time went by in a flash. So, as we wrap up, I did want to, and I thank you for all of your insights. They're incredible. I want to just ask you some fun random questions. This is our version of rapid fire rounds. So if you can say the first thing that comes to mind, okay?
Got it.
Don't stress.
Ooh, let me take some deep breaths. No, I'm
Yes.
kidding. Yeah.
Name your favorite social media platform.
Instagram.
Instagram. I'm always curious because there's so many platforms out there.
Mhm.
What's your go-to comfort food?
Korean rice cakes. So tteokbokki. Korean spicy rice cakes. Mhm.
Ah, okay. All right, here's one. Who is your K-drama celebrity crush?
Oh my God. Okay. You mean like not all? Oh my God. I have so many. He is, his name is,
Raises to the top.
he's Chang Young. Actually, he's 28. So he's like 20 years younger than me. Anyways, but he's super cute. And he is in a drama called Go Back Couple that I just watched. He's in a lot of dramas. It's about 3 or 4 years old, but he plays, I'm going to say a military student. Yeah, he's in training. But what I like about the character, why he's appealing, it's not just about the looks. Come on, I'm just going to be honest. His character is very noble. He's a really good guy, a gentleman, treats the woman well. That's why.
I see.
Just look him up.
That's
Chang
Chang
Hee-yong.
Kyung.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's like 28.
Nothing wrong with that. My mother is in her 80s and she loves Park Bo-gum and he's in his mid-20s.
Oh yeah, okay, that makes me feel better because I'm like, yeah, I sound like a, like what do you call
No,
poop? But hey,
no, she loves
yeah,
him as an actor, MC, and as a person.
yeah.
All right, lastly, what's the best piece of advice? This is more than one word, of course, but what's the best piece of advice you've given or received around mental health?
Yeah, okay. Is to never, and I said it earlier, it's to not ever, this is my piece of advice, and then I'll tell you about the one I received, is to not ever question how you're feeling. How you're feeling is how you are feeling. That's what I say. Now, the best piece of advice I got from mental health is honestly from my husband. When I was going to pursue this career, he's like, you know what? You have allowed your mental health to guide you in your navigating your different diverse career paths. So I think this is a calling because you're already putting mental health at the forefront. So that, I know that was a feedback given to me, but I went with that because I made mental health a priority without knowing it years ago. And
Mm,
that's why I'm doing what I'm doing today.
wonderful. Well, on that note, and I don't believe in accidents. I think things happen for a reason. So you're doing exactly what you were meant to do. And we're so grateful for your insights and your knowledge, and keep doing what you're doing and bringing your authentic self to us today.
Thank you. Thank you. I had so much fun.
Thank you so much, Jeanie. I hope you'll come back at some point because I think there's so much more that we can cover on this very, very important topic. So yes, you're The door is open for you.
Invite me anytime.
All right, thank you. So, for our listeners, I invite you to check out Jeannie's personal memoir. A is for authentic, not for anxieties or straight A's, and that is available now on Amazon. And I'll also be including her website with her bio, yourchangeprovider.com, with a special link to a treasure trove of Jeannie's social media interviews, mental health resources, and blog posts, including Nuna's Nunchi. So don't miss out. And then lastly, I'd like to call attention to an upcoming event because on Saturday, June 5th, Asian Women for Health is a community sponsor for the 12th annual Asian American Mental Health Forum. It's on connecting during COVID, mental health innovations and positive adaptations. So it's completely free, open to the public. It's a half-day virtual conference. We have a distinguished keynote speaker. There'll be a panel discussion and interactive workshops. So registration is now open. So please visit asianwomenforhealth.org to sign up. So as always, I encourage you to stay connected with this podcast on Google and Apple Podcast, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. And until next time, keep shining because the world needs you.